In a world simmering with the hum of progress and the cold glow of screens, the idea of a perfect society has always danced on the edge of utopia and dystopia. Imagine a future where every interaction, every decision, every moment of your existence is quantified, ranked, and scrutinized by an invisible engine of control. This isn't mere science fiction. It's the emerging reality of social credit systems, a web woven from threads of history, technology, and a growing craving for order amid chaos. Historically, the roots of social credit trace back to the early 20th century, a time when societal structures strained under the weight of rapid industrialization and ideological upheaval. Economists and sociologists began pondering the idea of moral credit, an assessment of one's civic virtue, honesty, and responsibility, beyond mere financial standing. But it was in the 1970s, with the advent of digital technology and data collection, that these concepts began to mesh with the emerging digital age. Governments and corporations started experimenting with ways to monitor and influence individual behavior on an unprecedented scale. By the dawn of the 21st century, the digital revolution had reshaped the landscape. Smartphones, ubiquitous internet access, and sophisticated biometric sensors transformed the way human beings interacted with their environment. The line between offline and online blurred, actions recorded and stored, analyzed, and increasingly used to make decisions that affected people's lives. Entire industries emerged, driven by algorithms designed to evaluate trustworthiness, integrity, and loyalty. Behavioral data became currency, a new form of social capital. Picture a city where your every move is tracked, not with malicious intent, but with the justification that it's all for your own good. Schools and workplaces began integrating digital IDs, monitoring punctuality, cooperation, and even your social interactions. Credit scores evolved into social credit scores, fines, rewards, and restrictions based on your behavior. The more you conform, the more privileges you receive, deviate, and you risk marginalization, exclusion, even punishment. This evolution was not solely about technology but about a society increasingly obsessed with control and predictability. Governments saw the promise of social credit as a means to foster harmony, eliminate undesirables, and usher in an era of unmoving order. Citizens, conditioned to accept scrutiny as a measure of safety, began to internalize these measures as necessary. The trust in this system grew, fueled by the promise of security, convenience, and social harmony. Yet, beneath the surface of this technological marvel lies a growing unease. The thin veneer of order begins to crack as reports surface of wrongful judgments. People falsely branded as disloyal, targeted for censorship not for their actions but for mere suspicions or political dissent. Families split, careers destroyed, lives shattered by the unfeeling hand of a system that values data more than humanity. What if these social credit systems expand beyond the borders of governance, infiltrating every aspect of life? What if your health, your relationships, your very thoughts were scrutinized and scored? The question echoes through corridors of power and corridors of fear alike. Could this all be the foundation for a new form of tyranny cloaked in the guise of societal improvement? In this world, privacy becomes a relic of the past. Personal spaces are policed not by soldiers but by algorithms, which analyze your voice, your patterns, your expressions. Every smile, every frown, each uttered word becomes data points, feeding an ever-growing matrix of behavioral profiling. Surveillance cameras and AI monitoring systems are seamlessly integrated into the fabric of daily life, creating a panopticon without walls. A society where transparency is enforced, but at what cost? As we peel back the layers of this emerging society, we are confronted with profound questions. Do the benefits of a highly regimented, predictable world outweigh the loss of individuality and freedom? Could the pursuit of perfect order blind us to the chaos of human nature, the unpredictability that makes us human? And perhaps the darkest thought of all, what happens when those in control decide which behaviors are acceptable and which are not? Who determines the boundaries of morality? And, most disturbingly, what happens when the need for control becomes an act of control itself? The story unfolds with a whisper. Are we headed towards a world where the value of a person is reduced to a number, a score, a badge of societal worth? Or are we simply witnessing the birth of a new societal contract, one that demands total transparency in exchange for security? As these questions linger in the shadows of our collective consciousness, a darker reality starts taking shape, one in which the line between safety and subjugation blurs, and the echoes of a society that tried to erase its fears begin to resound louder and louder. And so, in the silence that follows, the story of social credit begins, not as a distant chapter, but as an intimate, urgent warning. It invites us to ask what kind of society we are building, and at what cost. Because once the threads are woven into the fabric of our lives, the tapestry of freedom may never be the same again. In the silence of the morning, the city awakens under a sky cloaked in haze. Skyscrapers stretch toward the clouds like silent sentinels, their glass facades reflecting a world meticulously stitched together by unseen hands. Every moment, every movement is watched, recorded, analyzed, quietly, efficiently, relentlessly. It begins with the hum of cameras perched high above streets, their lenses silently capturing each passing face, each gesture, each hesitation. The scanners don't care about beauty or terror, they simply see and remember. Artificial intelligence, invisible yet omnipresent, sifts through the vast ocean of data collected from millions of individuals. It learns, adapting, evolving. Every step taken on a sidewalk, every coin exchanged, every window unlocked by a biometric scan. Each action feeds the system's insatiable appetite for information. Sophisticated algorithms work tirelessly through this deluge, assigning scores to each person based on behavioral patterns, social interactions, conformity, or deviation from the norm. A voice, cold and precise, describes the process as if from a distant machine. Behavior is analyzed based on proximity to authorized zones, compliance with public conduct standards, financial transactions, online activity, and social relationships. A person's score reflects their overall alignment with societal expectations. With each word, it feels as if a ghost is whispering behind a mask, detached, inescapable. Behind screens in hidden chambers, engineers and bureaucrats watch the live feeds. Their eyes flicker over digital dashboards that glow with red, yellow, and green lights, visualizations of human behavior. Scores fluctuate in real time, a digital pulse of morality that dictates access to privileges, or the denial of freedom itself. A slight deviation, the hurried step, the frowned expression, the stray comment online, can lower a score, marginalizing an individual from the societal fabric. This system isn't purely reactive, it's predictive. Machine learning models forecast potential risks, flagging behaviors before they happen, creating a preemptive web of control. It's as if society has become a vast, intricate net, catching the smallest cracks in conformity, tightening as more data accumulates. The AI's directives extend beyond immediate behavior. It analyzes social networks, friendships, even emotional states inferred from micro-expressions. The boundaries of privacy are dissolving into a digital fog. People are conditioned to follow rules made invisible by the system. Spoken rules that shimmer through law and regulation are replaced by subdued expectations. Smile when required, speak when summoned, avoid eye contact with authority figures. Cameras, drones, and sensors are woven into the very fabric of everyday life, an omnipresent surveillance that some say ensures safety, order, stability. Others whisper that it suppresses the human spirit, compresses individuality into a uniformed mass. Yet, the crux of this control deepens with the knowledge that the system's horizon extends further than anyone dares to imagine. How far could this go? The question hangs heavy in the air, a silent challenge that echoes through the corridors of power and the pockets of the oppressed. Could the system evolve to manipulate thoughts, predict crimes before they occur, or even erase dissent from existence altogether? The boundary between monitoring and influencing blurs. What's observed becomes what's expected, and what's expected shapes reality itself. In quieter corners of the city, underground networks whisper of a different world, one free from the relentless oversight. But even these whispers are monitored, their echoes traced back to origin points with frightening precision. The system's reach infiltrates dreams, aspirations, fears, turning hope into suspicion, love into loyalty tests. It's a new form of psychological containment, a cage built from the very data that once promised progress and safety. The narrative of control unfolds further in hidden data centers, where the raw streams of human activity flow into towering servers. Here, the human lives behind the numbers become abstract, distilled into scores that dictate not just privileges but the very fundamentals of existence. Where you can go, whom you can see, what you can say. Every aspect of a person's life, once private and sacred, now filtered into a digital ledger that determines their future as effortlessly as a rating on an online platform. For those who resist, consequences are swift and severe. Lower scores mean social exile, fewer work opportunities, restricted travel, denial of access to basic services. For some, it's a quiet fall into obscurity, blending into the shadows of society's edges. For others, it's a struggle against an inescapable machine that measures their worth not by their humanity but their compliance. The question remains: how far could this control extend? Could it transcend the digital realm, infiltrate the subconscious, shape perceptions so completely that free thought becomes a myth? Could these algorithms, initially designed to create order, evolve into tools that redefine morality itself, where the system holds not just the keys to privileges but the very essence of human identity? Could it eventually dictate not only actions but beliefs, desires, and dreams? In this game of shadows and zeros, the boundaries between the real world and the virtual dissolve, revealing a haunting truth. What's monitored and scored today might be only the beginning of a future where control becomes total, seamless, and absolute. As the city breathes under this digital dictatorship, the echo of resistance stirs beneath the surface, a whisper growing louder, a warning of what we may become if we allow the invisible hand to hold the strings that steer our lives. In a world meticulously calibrated by data, every action, every choice, reverberates through a complex web of societal evaluation. On the surface, it's a society driven by efficiency and clarity, where social scores define your worth, your opportunities, your very existence. Yet beneath this droning machinery of quantification, questions churn like a dark undertow. What does morality mean when your deeds are measured and weighed by algorithms? How are personal actions shaping not only individual destinies but the collective conscience? In this universe, the line between right and wrong tilts precariously. Imagine a young woman named Clara, whose every move is logged, scored, scrutinized. She volunteers at a local shelter, an act that, in most worlds, would be lauded as altruistic. Here, kindness earns her a slight boost in her social score, a tangible validation in her world. Yet, even this act is complicated when she notices one day that her volunteering hours are being artificially inflated by a data correction system, making her appear more compassionate than she truly is. The system rewards her on paper, but leaves her with a gnawing sense of duplicity, a question of authenticity. Is her kindness genuine if it is, in part, a calculated act of self-promotion? On the flip side, consider a man named Marcus, who drives a luxury car and hosts extravagant parties. His social score hinges upon his wealth display, generosity, and connections. But what happens when Marcus, in a moment of frustration, raises his voice at a clerk who failed to fulfill his order properly? That single impulsive act, a lapse in emotional control, can now be etched into his societal record as a mark of poor morality. The system punishes him with a temporary deduction, not for the act itself but because it reflects poorly on his character in this woven fabric of social reputation. Here we see that actions of emotion, impulsivity, or even honesty are no longer private. They serve as data points to judge morality. Yet, the system's compass is flawed. Sometimes, what is rewarded subtly encourages deception. Suppose an individual develops a habit of false altruism just to boost their social score, a strategic act of kindness meant solely to game the system. The lines of sincerity are blurred, and moral ambiguity ensues. When actions are reduced to data, when moral worth is distilled into quantifiable points, the essence of genuine human decency risks being lost, replaced by calculated appearances. What's ethical, what's truly compassionate, becomes secondary to what scores higher. Meanwhile, societal standing takes on a new dimension. A person's reputation, once crafted by word of mouth, is now broadcast by a score that fluctuates with each perceived virtue or vice. Two neighbors might live side by side, they socialize, they interact. But their social scores have a stark divergence. One carefully cultivates a facade of virtue, while the other, more authentic but less strategic in managing their image, suffers in the rankings. Over time, the accumulated data shapes relationships. Friendships are forged or fractured based on a number, an algorithm's judgment. The societal fabric, once woven by trust and shared values, becomes threadbare, ticked and torn by the constant evaluation, the silent tallying of human flaws and virtues. What are the ethical implications of such a society? When moral choices are reduced to data points, are we truly acting ethically, or merely optimizing for our scores? Are we losing the capacity for genuine remorse, compassion, or integrity if these qualities are only valuable insofar as they impact our standing? The system rewards superficial virtues and punishes authentic human complexity. Ethical dilemmas multiply. Do we act kindly because it's the right thing, or because it'll boost our score? Do we hide our true selves to avoid penalties? The pressure to perform becomes an inescapable force, possibly stripping away the very humanity that the society claims to value. Within this universe, whispers of rebellion stir. A clandestine group questions the morality of reducing human worth to data. They argue that morality hinges upon intent, context, and empathy, elements impossible to fully capture in a number. These rebels seek to erase the scores, to reclaim human authenticity from the cold grip of algorithms. But confronting such a system is perilous. Those who challenge it risk exile, social death, even physical harm. They are the echoes, a faint trace of a humanity that refuses to be quantified, a silent cry against a society that tried to erase the complexity of noble, flawed, and imperfect beings. The camera lingers on Clara's contemplative face, her eyes shadowed by doubt. She's part of this society, caught between the incentives of reward and the truths of morality. Her actions, volunteering, speaking out, hiding her true feelings, become a metaphor for the silent struggle for authenticity in a world obsessed with numbers. Every decision echoes in the shadowed corridors of her mind, questioning whether her moral compass is still her own or merely a reflection of what she needs to score well. The dark truth is that in a data-driven society, morality becomes a game, played for points rather than for principles. The more one's actions align with societal expectations, the higher their standing. But at what cost? Perhaps the most horrifying aspect is that the system, designed to make society more efficient, threatens to corrode the very human essence that gives life meaning. The question remains, can morality survive such erosion, or are we all merely puppets manipulated by unseen algorithms, our sense of right and wrong rewritten in the relentless pursuit of societal perfection? As the scene fades, the haunting realization settles. In this society, the loudest echoes are not of truth or genuine morality, but of the data points that tell us who we are, or who we are allowed to be. And in the end, the most profound question persists. What are we willing to sacrifice to be seen as good? To be accepted? Or perhaps, to simply be human? In the shadows of a society once built on trust and shared community, a quiet but relentless transformation had begun. It was insidious in its simplicity, scores, numbers, fragments of a once unified identity. At first, it seemed harmless, an algorithm tuning itself to what society deemed acceptable, a measure of responsibility, of discipline. But over time, beneath the veneer of order, it became a sword slicing through the fabric of human dignity. The lowest scores, once mere data points, turned into barriers, a fortress that kept many out, cast aside and invisible in a world that once valued compassion and connection. In the bustling city center, where light filtered through glass and steel, lives were quietly shattered by the judgment of a whim, a fleeting mistake. Helena, once an established professional, now found herself standing in line outside a government-run service center, her face blank with disbelief. The electronic screen displaying her social score flashed an ominous red. Denied. She had tried to book a train ticket for her grandmother's funeral, but her low score automatically blocked her. The staff behind the counter averted their gaze, instructed to enforce the rules without question, their eyes filled with the compassion they could no longer show. Across town, in a cramped apartment lit by the dying glow of a computer screen, Marcus stared at his email notification with growing dread. He had applied for a new job, one that seemed perfect for him, an opportunity to escape the financial ruins inflicted by the system's harsh judgment. But the response was cold and impersonal. Application denied due to low social score. His future, once a canvas of hope, now shrank into a narrow alley of despair. The system didn't just assess, it judged and cast aside. And the cost was, so often, the human soul. Travel, the very essence of freedom, had become a privilege reserved for the highest scorers. Residents of certain districts, with their low scores, now found themselves blocked from boarding planes, crossing borders, or even accessing public transportation. Anna, an artist with dreams of exhibition abroad, watched helplessly as her plans disintegrated. Her passport held a valid visa, but her social score, an unchangeable reflection of recent mistakes, was too low. She stood at the airport, clutching her bag, her eyes brimming as her entry was denied, a barrier erected by invisible yet implacable algorithms. The cruelty of the system was not just in the denial but in the silence that accompanied it. No appeals, no second chances, just a digital echo of judgment that reverberated into real life. Friendships strained under the weight of suspicion. Neighbors looked away, knowing that any misstep could condemn them. The social fabric, once woven with trust and mutual understanding, began to unravel, replaced by fear and suspicion. The low scores didn't just exclude individuals. They began to stratify society into segregated enclaves. The acceptable, living in comfort, while the deficient languished in isolation. From the corridors of power, the architects of this system observed the growing divide with a detached satisfaction. Their creation was effective. A society where accountability was enforced, but at a horrendous cost. Humanity was being cleaved, torn between those who played the game and those who failed. The very notion of community, embedded in shared empathy and collective resilience, was eroding into a stark dichotomy. Could this fragmenting society survive the weight of its own division? And lurking behind it all was a haunting question. Could this social credit system, intended to promote order and responsibility, ultimately lead to a split society, a permanent schism between the privileged and the castaway? Was it possible that a primitive fear of chaos and disorder was evolving into a new form of societal apartheid? The echoes of history, once thought rendered obsolete, began to resonate anew in the minds of those who watched helplessly, those who felt the cold bite of exclusion. In quiet moments, some wondered whether those in charge understood what they were forging. The system promised efficiency, stability, accountability. But as the walls of societal separation tightened, so too did the realization dawn. In this new world, humanity was becoming a collection of isolated fragments, each defined more by their scores than by their shared humanity. The social score, a seemingly mechanical metric, had become a mirror reflecting the darkest potential of authoritarian control. As the narrative of this society unfolded, the question hung heavy: was this the future we wanted? Could the pursuit of a perfect society be achieved at the expense of our very essence? Or was this just the beginning of a darker chapter, where the echoes of past injustices echo anew in the corridors of digital tyranny? The images grew darker, more visceral: families torn apart, livelihoods destroyed, lives redefined by intangible digits. The narrative didn't just depict a society conquered by technology. It was a reflection of human fragility in the face of power wielded without mercy. Each low score was a story, a silent scream carved deep into the fabric of society, whispering that the line between order and chaos was blurring, a line that once seemed clear, now fading into obscurity. And as the screen flickered, displaying the chilling message, denial, exclusion, marginalization, the question persisted, unspoken but persistent. Could this system, this silent judge, ever truly serve justice? Or was it creating a new form of division, a societal split so profound that the echoes of this attempt at control would be heard for generations? The darkness deepened, and the silent, heavy truth lingered. This, perhaps, was only the beginning of a society unraveling itself from within, forged anew by fear instead of trust. In the flickering shadows of a world that has grown eerily silent, the streets are almost deserted, save for the faint hum of surveillance drones overhead. The air feels heavy, pierced by an unsettling quiet that whispers of a society lost in its own reflection. In the heart of this landscape, a small gathering gathers in a dimly lit room, faces illuminated by the cold glow of screens displaying scores, data, and algorithms, in digital panopticon where every move, every word, and every thought is monitored, evaluated, quantized into a social credit score. At the center, Dr. Elena Montgomery stands with a quiet intensity, her eyes scanning the screen before her. Her voice, when she speaks, is steady but laced with a tinge of unrest. We believed in progress, in protection, in order. But at what cost? Her words hang in the air, unspoken questions echoing loudly in the minds of those present. The moral quagmire is laid bare, a society that once championed safety now shackled by its own tools of control. Across town, in a different setting, a young woman named Clara watches her reflection in a fractured mirror. Her face, once full of hope and defiance, now bears the weight of a dwindling trust. Her social credit score is low, due to a minor infraction, a forgotten payment, a questionable comment online. The consequences are immediate: restricted access to public services, limited employment prospects, social ostracism. Her world shrinks with each passing day, a reminder that her worth is now measured in digits. Meanwhile, in a government office, officials debate fiercely about their next move. Their voices crackle with a mix of conviction and trepidation. "We are safeguarding society," one asserts. "But at what point do we cross the line into tyranny?" another questions. The room is filled with data charts illustrating societal stability and rising compliance. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts simmer quietly, about privacy, about the loss of autonomy, about whether a society built on constant surveillance can truly be called free. This silent debate spills over into the streets and homes where ordinary citizens grapple with the weight of their own complicity. A father consults his app, seeing his daughter's score dip after a careless mistake. His face tightens with shame and helplessness, realizing that even love and care are now mediated through the lens of a numeric system. Each decision, each moment of compassion or rebellion, navigates the treacherous terrain of morality and survival. As night falls, the city's glow flickers, an unnerving reminder of its reliance on technology and control. The question looms large: is this society sustainable, or is it quietly transforming into a dystopia? It's a question that gnaws at the edges of everyone's conscience, a haunting echo of what humanity might be sacrificing at the altar of order. In the solitude of her room, Elena reflects on her role in this system. She had once believed that social credit would foster harmony, that it would encourage better behavior through transparency and accountability. But now, her doubts threaten to overwhelm her. Has she become an accomplice to a machine that erodes the very fabric of personal freedom? The morality of her actions, the ethical cost of the society they have constructed, blurs into a murky gray. Across the city, Clara makes a decision. Facing the reality of her diminished world, she chooses rebellion, not through blatant defiance, but a quiet, calculated act aimed at exposing the system's flaws. Her choice is risky, dangerous even, but it ignites a flicker of hope. Could there still be a way to reclaim freedom? Or are they all destined to be prisoners of their own creation? The story unfolds as an exploration of the human condition, how the desire for security can morph into a quest for control, how the pursuit of order can blur into oppression. It challenges viewers to reflect on their own society, on the invisible boundaries that shape their choices and identities. It questions whether technological vigilance enhances societal stability or if it quietly erodes the very morals that hold humanity together. As dawn approaches, the city awakens to a new day. Yet beneath its superficial calm, the seeds of doubt and resistance are quietly taking root. In the depths of her conscience, Elena recognizes the peril of their path. She wonders whether the society they have built is sustainable or if it is simply a ticking time bomb ready to detonate into chaos, leaving behind a landscape of shattered freedoms. This chapter leaves us with a haunting contemplation. When the systems that promise safety become chains, who bears the true responsibility? The rulers or the rendered? The moral questions linger, unresolved, as the society teeters on the brink of an uncertain future. It is, perhaps, a reflection of our own world, where the line between protection and control has become dangerously thin, and the cost of progress is measured in the erosion of human dignity. And as the screen fades to black, the question remains: the society they've built, sustainable or dystopian? A silent, persistent echo that refuses to be silenced. As the machinery of control begins to turn, society finds itself caught in a silent, growing storm. Policies are quietly, yet swiftly, enacted, each law a brick laid in the digital fortress surrounding the populace. Governments, once hesitant, now move with a chilling certainty, pushing forward with surveillance routines that seep into every corner of daily life. Cameras multiply in public spaces, eyes no longer just watch but predict, analyze, and judge. Data flows like an uncontrollable tide, consuming citizens' behaviors, collapsing the boundaries between privacy and surrender. In the midst of this, a handful of activists emerge, ghosts haunting the watchful eyes of those in command. They are shadows in the night, voices in the digital void, fighting with whispers and coded messages. They rally beneath the banners of resistance, not with slogans but with subtlety, hacking breaches, spreading clandestine newspapers, and setting fires of doubt even as their movements are swiftly traced and silenced. Their purpose is clear: blur the lines, challenge the system, awaken the awakened. Public backlash begins to ripple outward, slow as a storm gathering force. At first, small pockets of protest, silent sit-ins masked by the fog of discontent, little more than sparks in an increasingly monitored world. But as more wake from their numb compliance, the sparks ignite into flames. Cities become battlegrounds of dissonance, clashes between those who accept the new reality and those who refuse to be subdued. Streets echo with chants of defiance, digital platforms flood with messages of dissent, yet every word, every image, is under scrutiny, monitored for signs of rebellion. Yet, amid the rising chaos, a question lingers: what if the people simply refuse to comply? What if, instead of the subdued acceptance that governments gamble on, a collective refusal takes root? If citizens retreat into their own worlds, shutting down their devices en masse, abandoning the very systems designed to control them? Or perhaps they turn inward, creating sanctuaries of silence and resistance within their minds, refusing to feed the machine their data, their trust, their very cooperation. The narrative deepens, revealing that resistance is not a single act but a tapestry woven with small defiant threads, signs of refusal that grow louder and more coordinated. Communities hold secret meetings in basements, where words are fought over amid the hum of hidden routers. Ghost networks pop up, flickering in the digital blackness, allowing messages to travel untraceable. People hide their movements, impersonate identities online, and hack their way out of the surveillance web. Their rebellion is slow, calculated, yet relentless. This resistance, however, is a double-edged sword, a dance on a razor's edge. Governments respond swiftly, tightening their grips, deploying new layers of control. Every act of defiance is met with crackdown, every whisper of rebellion monitored and silenced. Trust erodes, fear spreads, and the very fabric of society seems on the verge of tearing apart. The question becomes: how long can such resistance hold? And what happens when the collective refusal becomes too widespread to ignore? As the chapter unfolds, the narrative explores the fragility of complacency. It questions the illusions of security and the price of silence, emphasizing that resistance might manifest not in grand displays but in the quiet refusal of participation. It asks whether the human spirit, when pushed to its limits, can break free, or whether the machine's relentless advance will ultimately consume all hopes of rebellion. In this dark landscape, the question persists: if an entire society refuses, if resistance becomes a collective unmasking, could the system crumble under its own weight? Or does it merely adapt, submerge, and tighten its grip further? Because in the end, the story is not just about systems and policies but about the indomitable will of the human heart to resist, to question, to survive. Even if that survival is shadowed by fears of what comes next. A future where the line between conformity and rebellion blurs until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins, leaving only echoes of what was fought for, and what was lost. In the cold dawn of a world unrecognizable, the city stretches out in a monotonous grid, silent, rigid, almost lifeless under the weight of an invisible surveillance. The streets are lined with screens that flicker with notifications, scores, and instructions, an endless reminder that every movement is watched, evaluated, quantified. People move through their routines like puppets guided by an unseen hand, each step synchronized, each gesture calibrated to optimize their scores. The hum of drones overhead is a constant background noise. Faceless sentinels monitoring lives that seem to exist solely to feed the vast machinery of control. In a dingy supermarket, aisles are organized with cold precision. A woman scans her shopping cart, her gaze flickering anxiously over the digital display above the checkout counter. The machine beeps and flashes, her score, her social credit, influencing what she can purchase today. Goods are limited, not by what she desires, but by what she has earned through her behavior, her conformity. She adjusts her expression, hiding frustration beneath a forced smile as the clerk silently updates her purchase history, her social reputation silently weighted with each transaction. Elsewhere, in a stark office tower, rows of workers sit in identically gray cubicles, mute testimony to a society obsessed with productivity and discipline. Their screens display not just work-related tasks, but live feeds of their personal metrics, heart rate, gaze focus, time spent away from work. Managers walk through with their devices, inspecting scores, ready to impose restrictions on those who falter or to reward the compliant. Leadership isn't just about hierarchy. It's a ceaseless evaluation of your worth, your worthiness to be part of this dystopian narrative. At a park, children play under the watchful eyes of cameras installed in the trees. Their laughter is subdued, cautious. In a society where spontaneity could be punished, innocence is muted by fear. Parents, anxious, monitor their devices constantly, tracking not just their children's safety but their social standing. The more he behaves in alignment with societal expectations, the higher their own scores climb. Conversely, deviation, even in play, is suffocated under the weight of expectations. Here, joy feels like a risky act, a potential stain on an otherwise spotless record. In quieter moments, individuals sit alone, their eyes fixated on handheld devices that display their current social credit score, a numeric reflection of their morality, conformity, and obedience. A young man carefully checks his feed, pondering whether a minor rebellious comment he made last week will ding his standing enough to affect his future job prospects. His fingers hover nervously over the screen, weighing the risks of expression against the desire for authenticity. It's a balancing act. One misstep could banish him from opportunities, isolate him socially, or worse. A fleeting scene reveals an elderly woman quietly being admonished by an authority figure, her score dropping, perhaps for unapproved words or perceived dissent. Her eyes cast downward, she accepts the reprimand with a resigned dignity, knowing her every thought might be judged. The system enforces compliance not only through surveillance but through fear, the implicit threat that any deviation could trigger sanctions, social exclusion, or loss of fundamental rights. Night falls, but the city remains illuminated by the glow of screens and the ever-present surveillance drones. People retreat into their homes, containers of personal space, yet nowhere truly private. Inside, the glow of devices continues to define their interactions, their hopes, and their fears. Conversations are coded with cautious politeness, words carefully chosen to avoid transgressions that could lower their scores. Even expressions of emotion are suppressed or calibrated, for showing anger or dissatisfaction could be seen as signs of instability or untrustworthiness. In their solitude, many reflect on the weight of their societal obligations, their memories of a freer past, a time when human complexity was celebrated, when authenticity mattered. But now, this society knows no room for unpredictability, for genuine human flaws. The score is everything, a numerical prison that confines and dictates every facet of life. And within this landscape of relentless monitoring and control, a flicker of doubt sparks in the minds of some. Could this be our future? Could these visions of a hyper-controlled society slip past the present, becoming the tomorrow? The thought is both terrifying and intoxicating, an echo of a nightmare that might someday become reality if humanity's desire for order over freedom, for safety over authenticity, continues unchecked. As dawn approaches once more, the city prepares for another day under the omnipresent eye. The cycle repeats: views, scores, compliance, an unending rhythm that shapes the lives of millions, every moment meticulously logged and evaluated. The question lingers, unspoken yet palpable. How many steps away are we from a world where freedom itself is just a distant memory, replaced entirely by the cold, calculated logic of social credit? The screen fades out with a lingering shot of a lone figure staring at a digital score that reads exactly 0, a reminder of how easily one can fall from grace in this relentless society. The world holds its breath, suspended between compliance and rebellion, questioning whether this is truly the future awaiting us, or just an echo of what once was lost. A haunting possibility lurking in the shadows of a dystopian tomorrow. In the shadowed corners of the city, where the light refused to reach and the walls whispered secrets, a solitary figure slipped through the darkness. A whisper of rebellion in a world that demanded silence. The underground movements thrived in these clandestine spaces, where every step was threaded with danger and each breath carried the weight of defiance. They moved like ghostly phantoms, their actions woven into the fabric of a society that sought to erase them, their voices echoing in the void of suppression. Amidst this clandestine resistance, stories of individuals emerged. Stories of survival against the crushing weight of an omnipotent system. Clara, once a school teacher, now an anonymous voice among countless others, hid in the shadows of abandoned tunnels, passing notes crafted with care, each one a spark of hope. Her hands trembled with the remnants of fear, but her heart burned with an unwavering resolve. She knew the stakes. A single wrong move could end her existence, erased from every record, every memory. Yet, even in her trembling, she found strength in the silent promise of rebellion, an act of defiance that refused to be silenced. Elsewhere, a man named Malik orchestrated secret gatherings, hidden in derelict warehouses, turned into sanctuaries of free thought and voice. His face was marked with lines of hardship, but his eyes radiated a fire that refused to be extinguished. These gatherings were more than meetings, they were acts of war against the system that sought to control every whisper, every idea, every heartbeat. They shared stories of those who'd fallen, their sacrifices woven into the fabric of their collective spirit, fueling their resolve to fight in the shadows. The clandestine actions went beyond words. Small acts of sabotage, subtle disruptions to the machinery of oppression. A flickering light meant to ensure compliance was secretly sabotaged, a secret broadcast slipping through the digital barricades designed to silence dissent. Every act was calculated, precise, born from necessity. They understood the dangers. One misstep, one whisper overheard, could mean annihilation. Yet, they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that silence was a form of death, and resistance was their only breath. In the heart of the city, hidden within the labyrinthine alleys, a young woman named Sophia devised a plan, an audacious act of rebellion that could ignite the flames of a wider uprising. Her hands worked tirelessly, mapping routes, evading patrols, her mind sharp and unyielding. She knew the risks, the system's eyes were everywhere. But her voice, her conviction, refused to be contained. Her resolve was forged in the fires of loss. Grief gnawed at her soul from the disappearance of her brother, taken by the state's machinery for daring to question. As night deepened, the stories converged into a mosaic of resilience and sacrifice. Each individual bore the scars of their rebellion, bruises, wounds, the constant threat of being captured or erased. Their lives were a constant dance on the edge of exposure, where one wrong move could mean oblivion. Yet, they persisted, knowing the costs they paid. The weight of secrecy bore heavily on their shoulders. Lies they told to protect loved ones. Disguises they wore to stay hidden. Sacrifices made in the dark to ensure that hope did not die. What is the true cost of rebellion? They asked themselves in the quiet alone hours, as the city slept unaware of the war waged beneath its surface. For some, it was the loss of their identities, their very selves stripped away by fear or forced conformity. For others, it was the pain of watching comrades fall, their sacrifices etched into the silent memories of the underground. Many bore physical scars, visible reminders of battles fought in shadows, their bodies marked as testament to their defiance. But the deepest wounds were often unseen, those carved into their minds and spirits, inflicted by constant paranoia, betrayal, and the suffocating weight of secrecy. Yet, amidst the pain, a flicker of hope persisted. In hidden moments when the city's watchful eyes were momentarily elsewhere, they clung to the belief that rebellion was more than destruction, it was creation, a rebuilding of what had been taken. Each act of resistance was a stone laid into the foundation of a future not dictated by tyranny. Their stories, fragile, dangerous, yet fiercely alive, are the echoes of those who dared to resist, the whispers of a flame that refused to be extinguished. And as dawn threatened to break, casting light on a city still trembling in the aftermath of another night's rebellion, a question lingered. Would their sacrifices be enough? Could they endure the relentless pursuit of a system that sought to erase them? In the quiet aftermath, they understood that rebellion bore a heavy toll, one measured not only in lives lost or scarred but also in the spirit resilient enough to keep fighting, to keep whispering in the darkness. Their stories didn't end in the shadows. They fueled the fire for those who dared to challenge the silence, who believed that even in the deepest darkness, there is always a seed of light waiting to bloom. The underground movement was not merely about survival. It was about asserting that belief, that choice, against all odds, to be seen, to be heard, to be remembered. Each clandestine act, each whispered secret, was a testament to their refusal to be erased. Their voices, once silenced, now echoed through the ruins of the old world, building the foundations for a new dawn. In this perpetual war of shadows, the cost of rebellion was undeniable, yet, it was also inevitable. The cost was their innocence, their peace, their safety. But more than that, it was their surrender, an act they refused to make. For in their defiance, they found their identity, their purpose, and their hope that tomorrow might be different. And so, under the cover of night, they continued, each story intertwined in the fabric of resistance, a testament to the unbreakable human spirit that refused to be erased, echoing through the darkness they tried to hide from. In the dim glow of the flickering screen, the world unravels its fragile fabric, teetering on the edge of what was once deemed impossible. The future looms ahead, a shadowed silhouette cloaked in uncertainty, as society grapples with the delicate dance of control and freedom. Guardians of progress speak of potential reforms, innovations aimed at safeguarding this new digital dawn. But beneath their promises lies a tangled web of ethical dilemmas, trembling beneath the weight of their own ambitions. Everywhere, there are murmurs, debates that ripple through bustling city streets and quiet suburban corners, about the boundaries that must be set. Some argue for stringent technological safeguards, protective barriers against harm, against misuse. Others, however, warn that such measures risk smothering the very essence of autonomy, the spark of human ingenuity that drives civilization forward. It's a dance between safeguard and shackles, where every step becomes a gamble against a possible dystopia becoming reality. Deep within these conversations are echoes of collective fears: the loss of privacy, the erosion of free will, the specter of surveillance creeping into every aspect of existence. Is society willing to sacrifice its own freedoms for the illusion of security? Or are we perilously close to crossing a line from which there is no return? These debates are no longer abstract, they're etched into legislation, layered into the fabric of daily life, shaping the future that seems almost certain to come. Amidst the turmoil, visions of reform flicker, proposals that seek to weave ethical principles into the very code of technology itself. Fail-safes embedded in algorithms, transparent decision-making processes, oversight by independent ethical boards. But as history has shown, progress often outpaces regulation, and the very tools designed to enhance freedom threaten to become instruments of control. It's a paradox: each technological leap, while promising liberation, carries the seed of potential tyranny. In these reflections lies a haunting question: can humanity navigate this perilous landscape without losing itself? Can society strike a meaningful balance, where innovation uplifts rather than enslaves? Or are we inherently doomed to forge a path where freedom is sacrificed at the altar of security, where choice becomes a privilege limited by design? These questions sit heavily in the air, unanswered, as the world teeters between hope and despair. As the discourse deepens, the narrative turns towards those on the front lines, visionaries and dissenters alike, striving to carve out a future rooted in ethics. Scientists who embed moral considerations into their creations, activists demanding accountability, policymakers caught between technological necessity and moral responsibility. Their voices echo through the corridors of power, raising alarms, calling for restraint, pleading for a future where humanity's values are not casualties of progress. But the momentum of change is relentless. Technologies evolve with relentless speed, often racing ahead of ethical oversight. Machine learning becomes more sophisticated, capable of autonomous decision-making, decisions that impact lives. Surveillance systems become omnipresent, tracking every movement, whispering promises of safety while infringing on personal freedoms. Every advancement raises new questions. Who controls these systems? Who holds the power to decide what is acceptable? And crucially, who ensures that these decisions are guided by morality rather than greed or fear? The film's tense atmosphere grows thicker as the narrative ominously pauses to ask: are we steering ourselves toward a future where human dignity is a relic of the past? Or can we, armed with conscience and collective wisdom, forge a path that preserves our core rights? Can society deploy technology as a mirror, reflecting its best ideals rather than its darkest impulses? The sky darkens further as the question persists, an echo through the corridors of thought. Humanity's greatest challenge: preventing this dystopian nightmare from materializing, from becoming the unavoidable future etched into the pages of history. Can we draw the line, set boundaries, and embed ethics into our digital soul? Or will the seductive lure of control override our better judgment, transforming freedom into a carefully curated illusion? In the end, the story doesn't offer answers, only a plea for reflection. For as much as technology promises salvation, it also bears the potential for destruction. The choice lies in the hands of those who dare to think critically, to question authority, to demand that progress serve humanity, not the other way around. The future remains unwritten, a canvas vast and blank, awaiting the brushstrokes guided by morality and compassion. As the lights fade, the haunting realization settles. Maybe, just maybe, the most profound act of rebellion is the refusal to accept a sanitized, controlled world. Is this enough to inspire a revolution of thought, to ignite a movement that champions ethical boundaries? Or will the chorus of apathy and complacency drown out the calls for justice? The echoes of their voices linger, whispering, warning, pleading, never to be erased, always to be remembered. And as the screen darkens, the unspoken question echoes loud and clear. Can humanity prevent this dystopian future, or are we destined to walk blindly into it? As the screen fades from black, a quiet stillness settles in. Shadows stretch across empty streets, silent witnesses to the stories we've told. The narrator's voice emerges, calm yet heavy with meaning, inviting us to reflect on what we've seen, what we've learned. In the dim glow of flickering memories, we realize that the journeys into dystopian futures weren't mere stories of technology run amok. They were mirrors held up to our society, shards of truth reflecting our collective fears and hopes. The social credit systems presented as tools for order and compliance slowly revealed their darker intentions. Control disguised as convenience, surveillance masked as security. We watched as individuals' lives were subtly, insidiously molded by algorithms calculating their worth, their obedience, their conformity. It was a future where human complexity was reduced to numerical scores, where compassion and error were weighed against rigid standards. The ethical questions hang dense in the air. How much control is too much? At what point does security undermine freedom? When does the desire for a harmonious society justify sacrificing privacy, trust, and individual liberty? These stories force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that technology, while powerful and innovative, is also deeply intertwined with morality. It's no longer about what can be done, but what should be done. Throughout these narratives, a pattern emerges, warning signs flashing across the horizon. The danger isn't solely in the systems themselves but in our willingness to accept, normalize, and perhaps even adopt them. The social credit futures portrayed are cautionary tales. They highlight the importance of vigilance, the necessity of questioning authority, and the enduring need for human empathy. They serve as warnings. If we allow algorithms and scores to dictate human worth without scrutiny, we risk surrendering the very qualities that make us human. But amid the shadows, there are sparks of resistance. Moments of defiance, kindness, and individual truth shine through. These stories remind us that even in the bleakest futures, there is space for hope, hope rooted in awareness and active engagement. It's a call to protect our rights, to question where society is heading, and to ensure that technology remains a tool serving humanity, not the master. As the journey comes to a close, one question persists. What sort of future do you want? Is it one where everyone is watched and weighed, where personal freedom is traded for the illusion of safety? Or is it a future built on trust, compassion, and respect, the essence of what makes us human? Imagine a world where technology empowers rather than oppresses, where transparency replaces suspicion, where fairness is rooted in empathy rather than scores. What choices do we make today that shape that future? How do we balance progress with morality? Our stories have shown us both dangers and possibilities, reminding us that the power to craft our destiny lies within our hands. So, I ask you now, what future do you want? A society shaped by fear and control, or one guided by human dignity and collective hope? The path is ours to choose. The echoes of these tales serve as a haunting reminder. The future is a reflection of the choices we make today. We are the architects of tomorrow's reality, and the history we write depends on the vigilance of our conscience and the courage of our convictions. The screen lingers on a quiet horizon, the light fading but the question echoing, a beckoning call to reflect, to act. Because in the end, the story isn't over. It's waiting for us to write the next chapter, with wisdom and awareness guiding every word. The future is not set in stone, but shaped by the choices we make now. And so, the shadows retreat, leaving behind only the question, what kind of future do you want?